Today, we're diving into a recent ruling by a federal judge about the mass firings of federal probationary workers.
Oh, that sounds significant. What's the main takeaway from this ruling?
Well, Judge William Alsup in San Francisco found that these mass firings were likely unlawful.
Right.
He granted some temporary relief to a coalition of labor unions and organizations that sued to stop the Trump administration's trimming of the federal workforce.
So he basically told them to halt the firings?
Exactly. He ordered the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, to inform certain federal agencies that it had no authority to order the firings of probationary employees. He was pretty clear that OPM doesn't have the power to hire or fire anyone outside its own staff.
That's interesting. I thought OPM had broader authority over federal employment.
Yeah, you'd think so, but Judge Alsup emphasized that OPM does not have any authority whatsoever, under any statute in the history of the universe, to hire or fire any employees but its own.
Wow.
He's known for his blunt statements.
No kidding. So who exactly filed this lawsuit?
The plaintiffs are a coalition of 5 labor unions and 5 nonprofit organizations.
Right.
They're pushing back against the Trump administration's efforts to vastly shrink the federal workforce. Thousands of probationary employees have already been fired, and the administration is now aiming at career officials with civil service protection.
That's a big deal. Probationary employees are those who've been on the job less than a year, right?
Exactly. There are about 200,000 probationary workers across federal agencies, with around 15,000 in California alone. They provide services ranging from fire prevention to veterans care.
And what's the argument from the plaintiffs?
They claim that OPM had no authority to terminate the jobs of probationary workers and that the firings were based on a false premise of poor performance.
I see.
They view these actions as illegal and demoralizing attacks on civil service.
What does the government say in response?
The government's lawyers argue that OPM didn't direct the firings but asked agencies to review and determine whether probationary employees were fit for continued employment. They also state that probationary employees aren't guaranteed employment and that only the highest performing and mission-critical employees should be retained.
So it's a question of authority and procedure then?
Yeah, it's about whether OPM overstepped its bounds.
Right.
Judge Alsup seemed to side with the plaintiffs on this point, at least temporarily.
Did the plaintiffs have any reaction to the ruling?
Yes, they celebrated the order but noted it's just a first step. Everett Kelly, the national president of the American Federation of Government Employees, called it an important initial victory for patriotic Americans who were illegally fired.
That's a strong statement. What's next for this case?
Well, the temporary restraining order halts the firings for now, but the legal fight is far from over. There have been similar lawsuits where unions haven't been successful, so the outcome isn't certain.
It's definitely something to watch. By the way, you mentioned Judge Alsup is known for his bluntness. Any examples?
Oh, absolutely. He oversaw the criminal probation of Pacific Gas and Electric and called the nation's largest utility a continuing menace to California. He's not one to mince words.
Wow, clearly not. Do you think his reputation affects how this case might proceed?
It could. His straightforward approach may influence the case's trajectory,
Right.
but ultimately it will come down to legal interpretations of OPM's authority.